Hello, fellow SkillUpper. Welcome to SkillUp Academy. In today's training session, we have Ariel joining us again for a new training session. So this Monday, he came live with us and showed us multiple ways to increase our multiple intelligence, which I actually didn't even know about. So I learned a lot from that, and I actually wrote an article right after that. So it was really, really inspiring, and it made me think differently, and hopefully it did that for you. And if you haven't watched it, please go ahead and watch it. So, all right, your time to shine this way.
Awesome. Thank you, Danny. If I could ask you to share the screen, that'd be awesome.
Yep, let's do this.
Perfect.
You see it,
guys? I do.
All right.
Fantastic. Great. So thank you again, Danny, for allowing me to come on. I'm really looking forward. The types of questions that happened on Monday were fantastic, so I'm sure today's session will as well. So this one, I'm going to focus on steps to becoming an entrepreneur. I want to preface it with that, there isn't just one way, but this is based on my experience becoming an entrepreneur. So this may fit with you or it may not, but these are some generalities along with my methodology. Just a little bit about myself, and Ajit, I apologize in advance because you already heard this introduction, but in case people are watching for the first time, my name is Ariel Margolis. I live in Massachusetts, south of Boston. Live in a lovely town of Sharon. I've got a 9th grader and a 6th grader. We have a few dogs. I am at my part-time job at Hebrew College right now, so you're not going to hear them. For fun, my whole family and I box. We box every day. It's very therapeutic. We love to garden, and thank goodness it's now summery out in Massachusetts, so we're able to actually see things grow. The winter and spring have been extremely gray, so appreciate it. But that's okay because we like to ski as well. Professionally, I run my own company called eLearning Solve. We design online content for entrepreneurs, startups, focusing on monetization and marketing purposes. In addition, we also work with a few ed tech companies to focus on user interface training. So these are a number of the companies that we work with. I also work part-time at Hebrew College, where I'm at right now. It's a small professional school outside of Boston, and I'm the director of student support. So I work with the graduate students who have learning disabilities and who need additional support. Prior to starting my business, which is almost reaching its 1-year anniversary, I worked at Hebrew College full-time as the director of online learning. And in addition to being director of student support, I taught a couple of graduate courses on special education, which is my training initially. Prior to coming to Hebrew College, I worked as a middle school principal and also taught middle school math and science. So that's about me. And I heard on a podcast, and I can't remember, I know it was the Business Blast podcast, that's what it's called. And one of the interviewees said that everyone can be a millionaire. So, which is a great way of saying everyone has the potential to make an impact, right? Everyone has the potential to become a millionaire. And when you think of entrepreneurship, that's the first thing that comes to mind, right? You think about dollar signs. You think about, I can become the next Bill Gates. I can become the next podcast sensation and make tons of money, right? What people don't necessarily understand is that becoming an entrepreneur is a particular mindset. And yes, it involves business, and business, the term business sounds really cold. And what I've learned through my own journey as becoming an entrepreneur, that it's actually not. It's actually quite exciting. It's quite an adventure. And that being able to quote unquote do your business does not necessarily mean that you have to work in a skyscraper at a desk and working for 18 hours straight. In reality, right, it's not about the money, right? It's not about the ability to, get a much higher paycheck. In fact, most entrepreneurs make less than when they started, when they worked in corporate or at their other job. The average salary in Massachusetts for an entrepreneur is $42,000 a year. And we are the third most wealthy state in the United States, and the fourth expensive. But in reality, we become an entrepreneur because we have a higher calling. We hear it. There's a purpose that our current work is not fulfilling. It's not meeting our goals. It's not meeting our passion of what we want to do, how we want to make an impact in this world. That's really what entrepreneurship is. It's answering that question of, I have something to give. I have something that I want to share with the world. I want to make an impact. And I want to do it my own way. I don't want to do it someone else's way. I want to do it my own way. So entrepreneurship is really looking at, and Ajit, you saw the same cartoon when I did about multiple intelligences regarding technologies. Entrepreneurship is the same thing. You see a need, there's a gap in the world. It could be within your own community that there's no recycling program. It could be within your country that the e-learning is not as effective as it could be. It could be global. You could be talking about the environment. You could be talking about society. You could be talking about how to help military folk transition into civilian life, and that there is a gap. And so your calling of wanting to help people, of wanting to give back, of wanting to connect people, whatever the calling is that's inside you that you want to be, you can fill that need. You're able to do that. That's really what entrepreneurship is all about. So the first thing when you want to become an entrepreneur, and just as, again, this is my perspective, my take on it, I actually was not planning to become an entrepreneur. I had dreamt about, running my own business and being a CEO and being on the 25th floor. But it really happened because at my current job, I was being given more work than I was being paid. And I wanted to get a raise, and they said no. And so I then started to look for other positions. All the while I was doing instructional design or designing e-learning as a side hustle to make additional income. And I started looking at other jobs, and nothing was really getting to me. And it wasn't until my wife said, why don't you just make a full-time gig out of your side hustle? And so I really thought about it, and I planned it out. And it really was, what did I observe? What do you observe around you that there's a need, right? That there's a gap, right? And this really comes from the scientific method that the first thing isn't to ask a question. The first thing is, what do you observe around you? What are you observing that leads you to the question, right? That will get you to the business. So I saw it as a teacher, as a special ed teacher, as a principal, as a professor, and as a director of student support, that education, the way that we were educating, is ineffective. That I wanted students to be invested in their learning, and the way to do that is to have teachers who invest in the students. And what I mean by that is, what are they interested in studying? What are their passions? And weaving in the skills that they need in order to, number one, meet their passion and interest, and number two, meet the skills that they need to become a contributing member to society. So my last year teaching in middle school, where I taught middle school science, it really looked like the engineering floor of Google. I had kids sitting on desks, sitting in chairs, sitting on the floor. They were working in groups, working by themselves. Another one was interviewing an artist in residence. Another one was interviewing a marketing expert because they were interested in marketing. Again, I taught chemistry, right? And what I observed is, it's really not so much the content that they need to know. They need to know how to critically think. They need to know how to collaborate. They need to know how to process information, and they need to know how to communicate. those are the skill sets that high school teachers were looking for, because I did my research. I found out what they wanted. And then I would talk to college professors and say, what are you looking for in students? And it was the same thing. They didn't care about the content. They didn't need to make sure that their students knew what atoms were or how they bonded. They wanted them to think critically. So I wove in the skill sets of learning about atoms, but we're able to personalize the learning. So students who are into marketing learned about how colors interact with one another. Students who were into cooking learned about chemical reactions. All these different things that happen. Now, I got a lot of flack from my principal because he couldn't see what was going on. He didn't understand it. He thought it was just a free-for-all. But the results were in the feedback that I got from students through surveys, basically saying that they felt that they had learned a lot about how to become a student, and also that you can be passionate about what you want to do, that school shouldn't have to dictate what you want to learn. So after you do a lot of observing, so that's what I observed, and I realized I couldn't make a big enough impact in changing the educational system in the United States, let alone an educational system in a school. I wanted to have a bigger impact. And that's not to say that teachers and principals who love what they do and are passionate about what they do don't feel fulfilled. They do. Those that love what they do, there are teachers who've been in the classroom for 20 to 30 years, and they are making a difference in those kids. I felt that I was making a difference, but it wasn't enough for me. So I wanted to be able to change that. So I had to formulate a question to solve the problem. How am I going to change the educational system, right? So that way it is geared toward the learner. It is geared toward people's passions. It is geared toward the skills that they really need, regardless of what area they go into. So you formulate a question, and this comes from my good friend Max Osborne of Osborne Capital Management. And this is from the business world, marketing world, that said, how do we solve blank with blank to get this? How do we solve the problem of education being inefficient with e-learning to get a change in the educational system? So that was the question. That was my question. How do I use e-learning? Because I really felt that online learning was the way to make a difference, the way to make an impact. And I'm sure that many of you have experienced online learning, and some of it may have been good, and some of it may have not been good, especially if you're in corporate, especially if you're in higher ed, where it's really, a lot of reading, maybe a discussion board, clicking through multiple tests, multiple questions to get to the answer. So the next step isn't to just come up with your answer. And so going along the scientific method, you first come up with the question based on what you observed, and then you research. You start asking people the question, how would you solve it? How would you solve the educational system using online learning? So this is where you come into play with your network. And so I reached out to a ton of people on LinkedIn. So this was probably in January of 2018, where I started just reaching out to various people in my LinkedIn network and connecting with people and interviewing them and saying, like, you were once a professor and now you're the chief learning officer at this corporate company. Like, what are you seeing are some of the issues? How did you, how would you tackle this? Using the internet to find the information. The internet is full of experts out there with experts' opinions. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow those experts, but it gives you a sense of what's already out there, right? So it helps you performing that research, being able to understand the problem, being able to understand what it is that you're actually asking. And sometimes you need to reformulate your question, right? Because if you get you may have a schema of what you think the answer is, but then once you actually start doing your research, you may find that, I got to go home and rework it. It may not be right. I'll give you a short example. When I first started, I thought that I wanted to do online learning in corporate. I thought I wanted to get into the corporate world because I knew that there was online learning there. I knew that the learning, for lack of a better term, sucked. That it was really, watching a talking head or watching a PowerPoint for 40 and listening to it for 45 minutes and then clicking through a multiple choice test as many times as you could till you got the answer right. I thought that's really not learning. But I found that that wasn't the way to make an impact, that I couldn't make as much of an impact as I am now. And so it really comes down to being able to determine, what you're really looking at. Now, when you have an idea, when you have your question, right? So Luke Williams is a good friend of mine. He's also, we collaborate. We've just formed a company together with a third party, designing, basically doing consulting work for entrepreneurs. One of his taglines is being able to call a baby ugly. So this is when you have your question, right? And you want to hear from your network, is it a good question? Is it something that's worthwhile, right? Or is it not? So for example, one potential client that interviewed with us, said, yeah, I really want to start my business in bridal showers. I'm like, okay, so tell us about, like, why do you want to do it? Well, I can really do it for cheap. I can do it for just very little money. I'm really good at it. And so we basically said, we called the baby ugly and said, that's not really a business plan. That's not entrepreneurship. That's just being able to do something effectively. Said, there's not a niche to that. Like, I can do a baby shower by getting a list and going to, the dollar store and using coupons and stuff like that. So there's got to be more to it. So it's okay you have to be comfortable being able to say that, yeah, this isn't a good idea. And you have to be able to take that feedback in, and be able to rework it. And to separate out that just because the idea isn't good doesn't mean you're not good or you're not smart enough, because you are. So once you have your research, once you have the information, you can then start to answer this question. How do you solve this with that to get this, right? And it's that. How are you going to solve it, right? What is the plan, right? That's going to get you to solve it. So in terms of planning out, figuring out like what your entrepreneurial project's going to be, one of the tools that I would recommend, and there are many out there, this is the one that I recommend. It's called Entrepreneurial Operating Systems. And in the PowerPoint, there's a hyperlink to it, which I'll take you to. This is completely free. And it walks you through how to set up your entrepreneurial business. And the cool thing about it, what I like about it, is that it starts with the big picture, right? It starts with setting up a vision. It starts with understanding what your data is. It understands what your purpose is, defining your goals, coming up with a 10-year plan. Like, in 10 years, how do you want to see your business? And that's a question that a lot of entrepreneurs don't necessarily, they have a feeling about it, but they've never actually put it into words. Putting it into words, saying like, I want to have revenue of $30 million and be the expert in online learning for startups and entrepreneurs, that's great, right? I want to be on the business and not in the business, fantastic, right? What does it look like in 5 years? What does it look like in 3 years? Working backwards. All of this is free. All the tools are free. There's actually there's an audio that you can listen to that walks you through the steps of how this system works. I highly recommend it. You can also find an EOS coach and be able to work with them. So this is really the tool set. And what I'll do is I'll show you, I'm going a little off, well, not exactly off, but I'm improvising here for 1 second, so bear with me. So the company that Luke and I and a third party named Rich Cardona created, I'll show you what our workspace looks like once it finishes loading. So the three of us got together, Rich, Luke, and I got together at Luke's house. He was in North Carolina. And for 18 hours, we worked on developing this project. Developing a vision, developing our core values, what makes us unique, right? So we're a consulting firm. Well, there are hundreds of consulting firms out there. So what makes us different? What makes us stand out? Here's our 10-year product, our 10-year projections, our company rocks, which are the staples that we formulate every quarter. We designed accountability seats. Who is in charge of what? What gaps do we have? What's missing? And I'll cover that in a little bit. But all of this whole spreadsheet and the outline for our weekly meetings, which we hold, that's all from EOS. It's all free. Again, if it has to jive with you, it has to ring true to you that this is a system that's going to work for you. There are plenty of other systems out there, but the biggest takeaway that I want you to have is that to come up with your plan, you want to make sure that you're not starting from scratch. There are tons of resources out there that you can find. So this is just one of them. Right? And being able to ask, one of the things that from your plan, you will say, who's going to be part of my group? Who's going to be part of it? Right? What needs to be true in order for the business to take off? Right? What are the skill gaps? If let's say I am designing the equivalent of eBay, but for cars, for auto sales, and I want to make it almost like a lottery type deal. What do I need, right? I'm not a salesperson. I'm certainly not an engineer. I'm not a coder. In fact, Danny and I were talking about that earlier, that my knowledge of coding is very little. So if I wanted to design an app for my business, I need a coder, or I have to learn it, right? And so asking those questions of what needs to be true, right? Knowing, does it make sense for me to learn how to code? Should I be able to do that? Is it something that I want to do? If that's what I want to do, okay, then I need to budget for that. I need to make sure that part of the plan is that I'm going to learn how to code Python or C++. Is there content gaps? Coming from an educational background, I knew very little about marketing, but I made it a priority to learn from experts out in the LinkedIn community and Instagram community how to market effectively. And to work with marketers. In the group that Luke, Rich, and I formed, Rich is the marketing expert. He's a social media marketing expert. So I'm learning from him, but I don't have to do the work, right? For my own company, I do the work. I do my own marketing, right? And are there financial gaps? One of the biggest stumbling blocks is somebody says, okay, I'm going to quit my job and become an entrepreneur. All right, well, how much money do you have in reserves? It turns out that financially, I could do it. I was able to start my business and work full-time in my business or on my business a year ago. 3 years ago, I couldn't do it. I don't want to have to boil the curtains for soup for my family. We want to be able to take a vacation, and my kids were 3 years younger, and they needed my attention more. So I wasn't willing to sacrifice that. So understanding the financial gaps is really clear, and it's good to, again, be told that it may not be the right time. Maybe you want to start your business, but it should be a side hustle. It should be a side gig while you are building your business. And that's what I did during the last 6 months of my job, that I played the string. I did what was expected of me during the last 6 months of my position at the college. But I also started building out my business. So every spare moment I had, that's when I was learning and building and designing. The other important piece that I have learned, which isn't necessarily talked about, is that an entrepreneur does not mean that you are a solopreneur, that you have to go at it alone. As a matter of fact, you shouldn't. You should not go at it alone. You can't do it all. There's no way that you can. So getting partners involved, getting mentors, getting coaches, people are willing to roll up their sleeves and work for sweat equity. They're willing to say, you know what, I am willing to give you 10 hours a week to do marketing design in exchange for 10% of your equity in your company, because I believe in it. It's one of the first business models that worked for me when I was working with a friend of mine, Trey Tatro, in his business model, where he wanted to basically create the equivalent of Match.com, but for realtors and homeowners and buyers and sellers. I put in sweat equity. I was willing to do it because I believed in the project that he was working on. I believed in his approach, and he and I worked well together, and we still work together. So there are tons of people out there who are willing to give you their time and their energy, and seek them out. And sometimes, it is going to cost you, and that's part of the financial question. Like if you want to get a coach, if you want to hire a marketing firm or a marketing individual, I paid someone to create my website. I could have created my website. I started to, and I spoke to a connection on LinkedIn who is a website designer. And I said, do you recommend this site, this or this? And he said, why don't we have a talk about it? And he asked phenomenal questions that I never really thought of before about my own business and about the website. And finally I said, you know what? The value of it is amazing. So I made the financial decision to work with him. So in the age of social media, where we've got Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, these are where not only can you find prospective clients, but it's also where you can find prospective partners and mentors and coaches. One of my passions that I learned being an entrepreneur is helping veterans who are looking to transition out of the military. Those that are serving, that are transitioning out, that are going to become veterans. And so what I do is I coach veterans for free, and I make it very clear that that's my way of giving back, because they served and protected my family and served our country, served the United States, and it's my way of giving back. I love it. If I could do it full time for free, I would. But this way I'm able to interact and help them move along. And so I helped someone that was going to originally do analytics, business analytics. He's now starting up his own marketing firm. There's another one that was, an entrepreneur, and now he is working for a marketing company. There are others that want to become teachers, and so I help them to get on their path. So it's my way of giving back. And there are people out there who constantly give to me as well. The other important piece of becoming an entrepreneur is taking the time to reflect, stopping and reflecting daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Where am I? What am I doing? What have I learned? Understanding that this is a process. This is a learning process. That the stories that you hear or see, and it's not as common anymore. Where it used to be, how to make $30 million in 2 years, or bring in $30,000 a month. There's a lot of behind the scenes, and a lot of quote unquote failures. I know that's like a bad word, or it's perceived as a bad word, but it's not. It's actually how we learn. We learn best through trial and error, and being able to reflect on it. That the conversation that I had with this prospective client didn't go well. Why? Why didn't it go well? When I first started putting out proposals and they got rejected, one of the things I would ask from the prospective client was, could you tell me the reason that you didn't want to go? I said, I'm not going to push you on it. I'm not going to change your mind. It's just to help me grow so I can understand how to become better. That it's brave to do that, because you may be hearing that your ideas are an ugly baby. It may be hearing that, you were too aggressive, you were too expensive, you weren't clear, you didn't respond in enough time. You want to take that information and reflect on it and say, how can I improve, right? I remember one of the big aha moments is that it's okay if I didn't bring in any money today. If I learned and I grew, but I didn't bring in any income today, that's okay, because I'm able to appreciate and build off it. The other piece is, with becoming an entrepreneur, is to pivot, making sure that you are ready to pivot from your goal. So remember I said that I was going to initially go into instructional design for online classes or e-learning for corporate. And I realized it wasn't the right industry for me. It was hard to get my foot in the door. The people that were interested only wanted me to use one or two types of programs. They wanted me to sort of they liked what I had to say about education, but in the end it was really like, just make a PowerPoint, and because we need to get this going. I wouldn't have been happy. I might as well have stayed in my other job. So I pivoted and I focus now on startups and entrepreneurs, all the while not losing sight of my mission of wanting to change the way education is done. And my hypothesis is, if I can demonstrate, if I can get entrepreneurs and startups and ed tech companies to understand how education can be more effective, they can put pressure on the educational system. So it's not just me being in the educational system, getting on my soapbox and saying, we need to do X, Y, and Z, but it's getting people from the outside. So that way, when they, whether they're a parent, whether they were a recent student, whatever, they can say, oh, this isn't how schools should be. It doesn't have to be like this. I know this because I do it in my own business. And so getting that mindset and that mind shift of helping the educational system see it from the people that aren't educators, that's my mission. And there you have it. That's my tour and my steps of becoming an entrepreneur. And granted, it's been a little more than a year. Well, it'll be officially 1 year in July 1st. And I know that in a year from now, I will have learned a ton more. But using the scientific method, being open to learning, being open to pivoting, and accepting help and seeking help is really the way to go. To become an entrepreneur, all the while making sure that you can answer that question. We can solve this with this to get this. And that's it.
All right, thanks for this. I actually took so many notes, and I've got so many things on my mind right now. So I'm going to go through a few of them.
Sure.
And starting with the very, very start of the presentation. So it's been twice that you mentioned boxing every day. So how do you find the time to do that? Where do you go to? How do you, because as entrepreneurs, we tend to just be like, business. I got to keep working on my stuff. And it's not true. You need external activities like that, and especially something physical. Because a lot of people don't start startups that are too physical. So I think it's really important.
Absolutely. Great question. So I'm a morning person. So I get up at 4:30.
Oh, cool. Same.
And I go to the gym at 5:15 and do a boxing class in the mornings.
And your kids as well?
They go in the evening. So I
okay.
take them in the evening. Yeah, no, they're not morning people. I'm the only one in my house that's a morning person. But what I will do is I found that I also want to have time with my wife at night. And so you can't burn the candle at both ends. So what I will typically do is I will take a nap in the middle of the day, like 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, I do the same.
Right. And so that's how I'm able to get so many hours in. And I see something that, you and I talked about earlier in terms of like going to the supermarket, like taking a break from your work. Taking a break, so boxing or gardening or food shopping, whatever it is that can help you sort of reframe something that's not going to be too stressful, but that takes you away, actually helps you to reflect and to problem solve. And something that I know I've mentioned his name several times already, but Luke Williams taught me when we met in person is that you don't want to spend who wants to spend 18 hours a day, 6 days a week or 7 days a week working on the business, right? Like I know the CEO of Alibaba says that that's, the norm, but he said, you don't have to do that. You should be able to, how effective is your time? How valuable is your time to you? And so being able to enjoy a softball game or watching the Bruins play, the hockey team, or lacrosse or whatever it is that you're interested in, or going to a movie, like that's okay. That's actually part of being a human being. We're not computers. We're not designed to work like that. So, but you have to structure your day. So that way, you are getting stuff done. So, I mean, I use my phone a lot. I'm on my phone a lot. I try and keep it in my pocket, at dinner times and the times that we're with family and friends. But it's always there's what's called the work-life balance, which is really life, and every day is different. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, in my case, I didn't know you were waking up as early as I do, and so in my case, I wake up. It changes every month. So this month it's 5. Sometimes it's 4. So I change just to see if there's something better that I can do,
cool.
and basically, so I wake up at 5 right now, but I really only start work at 9. So there's 4 hours in there where I focus exclusively on my self-improvement. And a lot of
That's
people are
awesome.
like, wow, you work so much. You wake up at 5, at 4, and you finish at 7. But the reality is I actually only work 6.5 hours every day, even though I
Right.
finish at 7, because in the afternoon, sometimes I have an hour of admin tasks, which is basically anything, replying to emails. It could be just reading a book, could be following up on my learning on YouTube. So all these things. So in the afternoon, I know I don't work super well. So I don't stress about getting so much work done in the afternoon. I do all that in the morning mostly, and end of afternoon in my case. So people think that I work 14 hours a day, but really, no, I really don't. And you said something about, making like money. Like that's what people think about. But in my case, my currency is learning. My currency is the skills that I acquire, because the more skills that I have, the more I can combine them in creative ways and make something that is completely unique and authentic. And in a world where there's just so much noise in everything, being authentic and original and creative is one of the best ways to have breakthrough.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people focus on acquiring money. And whenever I try to create a new project, I always try to see what am I going to learn from it, and how that's going to help the business going forward.
Exactly.
So yeah,
staying true to your mission, right?
yeah,
That's
exactly. There's one thing. So you were talking about researching, and obviously that's a big part of starting a business. And it used to be that people were expected to build business plans that were 50 to 100 pages, and that has shifted because the speed at which things are going is faster than it has ever been, and it will continue that way. So big business plans obviously are very rare nowadays. So how much time do you actually spend on research before you actually get started on just the first task on your project?
It's a great question. In the beginning, I probably spent on average about 2 hours a day for about 4 to 6 weeks, just researching information. And then it's part of my processes that I'm constantly, just like what you're doing, constantly learning and seeing what the latest trends are, learning what the newest features are, what is out there, because I don't know it all. And a sign of a curious student or a successful entrepreneur is that they're not the experts. Anyone that says that they are quote unquote expert, and I used to say this all the time, of middle school, if you're an expert in middle schoolers, like you're full of soup. There's no way, you can't be an expert, unless your last name is John Dewey, and even Bill Gates, brilliant guy, but he surrounded himself with great people, smart people. He knew he couldn't do it himself. But the research piece is probably the most overlooked piece. So instead of they come up with the question like, "Hey, let's dive in. Let's start building." Like, wait, ask. People, they want their brains picked. They want to know. They feel valued that way by giving them, what are your thoughts on this project? What do you think? How did you become an entrepreneur? How did you do this? Like, people are willing to share, especially in this day and age. And your point is well taken with regard to business plans, that, the 20-page or 100-page business plan is just no more. You can't, because it has to be flexible, right? You got to be flexible. I think the core components of a vision and a mission statement with core values, that should be there, and time should be built in, and having a roadmap, if you will, of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. But knowing that roadmap, you might veer off in an exit, or you might decide to take a different path. And being able to rely on your core values and your mission and vision to guide you, it won't steer you wrong.
One thing that I'm thinking right now, you mentioned people that jump right to action and just start doing without doing much research. And there's the other end of the spectrum where someone just does too much research so they actually don't start. And I feel like as a lot of entrepreneurs actually have a problem with on one side or the other. I'm a starter, so I tend to jump a lot faster than I really should on projects. And there are people that I know who have been talking about their business plan for years and haven't even started to dig yet. So, and I think that goes back to what you were talking about by the solopreneur kind of thing. And that has been a problem for me, actually. I started 7 businesses now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's what I said. I just start, right? And I have acquired all these skills, and I typically don't have to get people to do stuff with me, though I would love to have people to work with me. The problem is I can't find them. So you mentioned there are a ton of people that are willing to give their sweat equity. And my experience has been that if I haven't been able to actually find someone in the 7 businesses that I've done that think on the same level as I do and want to invest as much as I do to make something successful. So any thoughts on that?
Wow. So first off, I'm surprised given the, with SkillUp that, because that's a huge draw that people, and so part of the advice, so number one, it's all about the relationship. It's all about the relationship building. So understanding like who,
so that would be the research part
that's the research
I kind of fail to do by jumping too quickly, right?
Yeah, I think so. But at the same time, like, the other tidbit that I learned is that, and this is, I think I found this true more on LinkedIn than on Facebook, is that the question is always asked, like, how can I help you? Like, what can I do to help you?
LinkedIn is phenomenal for that. I just recently discovered that.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is fantastic with that. And people tell me that I'm always willing to roll up my sleeves, and I am. If it's something that I'm really passionate about, yeah, like how can I help you out? So it's a matter of, and it's not necessarily for pay, but it's like I will promote you on my podcast if you are willing to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, sure, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to review your website and to give you some feedback on it, to say like how could it be better. I think that's where being able to ask that, making sure that you ask questions like, how can I help you with your business? Is helpful, is a way to sort of to get in. And I think doing the research of using the network in LinkedIn to connect and find out about businesses that interest you, or area people that are just, I'm interested in how you got from A to B. And would love to learn more, and responding to their posts and commenting, and then reaching out and saying, I'd love to have a conversation with you, and then making the ask. You're not so I'll be very transparent. You asked me if I'd be willing to teach. That's not a big ask. That was not a big ask. Because you did the research, you understood who I was, my background, stuff like that. So it was right within my wheelhouse. If you asked me, like, could you do my budget for me? I'm like, I'm probably not the best person to do that. I'm happy to direct you to somebody, but I'm not, so it's knowing when to ask, what to ask for. and people are willing to do it. I think that it's especially in the entrepreneurial spirit of, you know, what am I going to get out of it? You know, so the fact that, you know, I now have a webinar coming up with Ramis, which was a participant in Monday's presentation. Like I never would have connected with him had I not done this class.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the benefit of that is huge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was mentioning the skills being a currency in the business, a real asset, and network is just big. There's a quote. I don't remember who said it, but your network is your net worth.
Yes, absolutely.
This is beautiful, and I realized that late. I realized that after my 7th business, the one I'm doing now. So yeah, very important, and that goes with like skill gap as well.
Mm-hmm.
How do you fill these skill gaps? And sure, you can take on everything like I do, but the real smart way is to increase your network.
Yep.
So I agree. LinkedIn has been really great, and one of the things that I just realized is that people are willing to connect on LinkedIn for the right reasons, obviously, like you mentioned, but it's actually super easy.
Yes.
So last month or the last 2 months, I've basically just found people that were guests on podcasts, and the people that I found interesting, I just reached out on LinkedIn. I said, you know what? I listened to your podcast episode with that person, and it really resonated with me. Would you be interested in connecting? And that was it. That was my message for pretty much everyone that I connected with. And it works really well. And when people send me requests and they don't send a note, I don't accept. I don't even know why they want to connect. Right. And it's just so simple to add a note. I found you through that, and I think we should connect.
Yep. So personalizing it, because again, it's all about the relationship. So it takes 10 seconds to write a personalized note, like saw your post or heard you on a blog, on a podcast, or read your paper. Would love to connect to learn more. Period. Because you're showing a vested interest.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And literally, so from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I've spent $0 on marketing. All of my clients, all of my potential clients and my leads, all of that have been through $0. It's all been through using LinkedIn and Instagram, just commenting and being out there and forming relationships. That's it. No ads, nothing.
Yeah, my friend Jordan Gross, who did a live session.
I didn't know you knew Jordan. Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're good friends actually. He did a training session with us as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's his tactic as well. He grew from zero network at all on LinkedIn, and now he has 15,000. Right. And just because he's genuine, like he's one of the most genuine guy out there. And even though he connected with 15,000, he actually researched all these people, and he's super organized. He's got a spreadsheet, and he can recall like, okay, this is what I talked about with that person, and just so he can always tell. So
that's awesome.
Great guy for sure. Yeah, you mentioned somewhere the calling babies ugly or something like that. And how do you get people to tell you that your baby is ugly? How do you get the brutal feedback? I do surround myself with people that are very good at this, but a lot of people are either not prepared to receive it or can't find someone that they trust enough to receive it from.
So it's a great question. So a lot of it comes from communication, because being able to call a baby ugly is very similar to telling a student, you failed. You didn't meet the expectations, or telling parents your child is not thriving.
I like that. The child is not thriving. It's like it's so polite yet so direct.
It's direct, right? Your child's not thriving. And I think that there are two ways that I go about it. One is to give the message both directly and indirectly that in this moment, you are the most important thing to me. And I care about you as an individual. I care about you as a fellow human being. I care about you and your business, like what you want to do. And so that's one message that I make sure to give. The other message is when I'm giving the ugly baby speech, is that I say, if this were my business, if I were in your shoes, I would want to hear X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I want to be able to do this, this, and this. From hearing it, the way that I frame it, and I used to do this I used to do regular check-ins with my grad students and also with business partners as well. And like, give me the bad, honest truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You're not going to hurt my feelings. I may feel disappointed in myself. I may feel upset. But usually what those feelings are is that's an indication that there's truth to it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And the truth of the matter is, and this is whether you're an entrepreneur or a CEO or an employee or whatever it is, a parent, if you're a parent or you're a son or a daughter, like you have to be willing to take that feedback.
You have to, absolutely.
You have to. Otherwise, you're not going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. It still hurts receiving it.
Yeah.
But damn, I'm actually happy. Like, it's weird to have this feeling of like, shit, I'm hurt, but
yeah.
You told me, and
it's
not your fault for telling me. Like, thank you.
Right, like you're saving me hundreds and hundreds of hours or thousands of dollars of not making the mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like so many times where, and I look at it as 20 years ago, like I thought I knew it all. I certainly didn't. Now, like, when they say, oh yeah, you should really do this webinar funnel and really pay for it, it's like $30,000. So I go to a person and ask them, what do you think about this? Right? And they say, no, you don't need it. I'm like, okay. Thanks. Right? Versus, yeah, I'll pay for it, and then what? Right? I don't see the results. I don't need it, and he was right. And if he was wrong, okay, he was wrong.
Huh.
Right? It's not a life or death situation. So.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned a very important part, which is kind of on a similar trajectory where we were going, was reflection. And I completely agree. And the more you reflect, the kind of the less that you're going to be surprised by the brutally honest feedback. And a lot of people don't do the weekly, daily, weekly, and monthly reflection. They just reserve the reflection for end of year, New Year resolution. Let's do it.
Yep.
And I recently, I guess a few months ago now, I started adding to my schedule. So I did say I changed it every month, and I did add, and I've kept it, a 15-minute daily reflection at 7.
Awesome.
Finish my day and have a list of 23 micro habits that help me have the energy that I need to go through the day, keep the motivation, and just be really like in a good momentum. And I have found that if I follow this checklist, and the more I follow this, my energy levels are through the roof, and I accomplish so much more. So it's very important for me at the end of the day to realize, have I accomplished all these things? And they're pretty simple. Some of them are just, have I read a powerful quote that motivate me? Super easy. I can take just 5 minutes, find the right quote, and understand it, and that's it. Super easy. And all the 23 are pretty much simple like that. And if I don't do it, I don't have the energy. So daily reflection is absolutely important.
Absolutely.
What went right? What went wrong? How could I improve? And obviously, I do exactly the same every week on Sunday, and I do my weekly schedule at the same time. And just has been phenomenal in my entrepreneurial journey to be able to be self-aware like that. And yeah, absolutely amazing tip.
And everybody is different. So, the 3 that work the 23 that work for you, that works for you. And some people will say, yeah, I can do that, but I only need 5, or I need something else. great, good.
Yeah, exactly.
But just do it. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I have so much more, but you know what? It's been almost an hour, so there's another session I think next week, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
What's the topic for next week?
I think leadership. I think it's on leadership, like what I've learned as being a leader, as a principal, and as a entrepreneur. So, what leadership skills can you use and utilize?
Cool. Yeah. So talking about entrepreneurship and now leaders, because entrepreneurs have to be leaders if
Absolutely.
they're growing. So
Absolutely.
good follow up for sure. Anyone in the chat has any questions? I like how on both screens there's tons of orange. I should add more orange. There we go, more orange.
Love the orange.
All right. Well, if there's no more question, you and I should go eat. Same thing again.
Yeah, agreed.
Got a bag of green beans here. This is my new snack.
Nice.
I just eat green beans for some reason. I love them.
It's good. They're good.
All right, guys, this was SkillUp Academy. In today's training session, we learned many lessons on your entrepreneurship journey, whether it comes from money, how to start, what are the right questions to ask yourself before you start, how to research and how to get started, how to surround yourself with the right people to get it to the next level. So it's a really, really important session by Ariel, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
All right, thanks guys for joining live. And if you're watching the recorded version on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. We run these training sessions on average 5 times a week. So yeah, there's always new stuff, and it's always about different skills every time. So entrepreneurship is a very important skill for a lot of people. So there's going to be more on that. All right.
Sweet.
Thanks, guys.